Imagine a world without choices.
UIC Liberty TV. Change you can trust.
Imagine a world without choices. Imagine you can't make your own decision. That wouldn't be a world for me. That wouldn't be a world for you. UIC. Tell them they're gonna be stronger. Together, together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. Gonna be stronger together. Time we all just unify. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. It is a natural right for every human being to be free. Free, so free. So the government is there to protect you and me. UIC objective is to liberate the citizens from colonial bondage, the regulation.
UIC Liberty TV. Change you can trust.
Apparently you couldn't hear me. Let me start over. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of UIC. I think you can hear me now, I hope. Good evening, Mr. Barnett. How are you doing, sir?
Good evening, Mr. Patterson. I'm doing quite well.
Wonderful. For a moment there, I was talking to myself because I didn't realize that the microphone wasn't on. But good to see you on, sir. All dressed up in your UIC shirt and everything. That's wonderful. How was your day today?
Well, it was quite an interesting day. As you see, I'm just coming off the road. It has been quite an interesting day.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you could make it. You're no stranger to UIC Liberty TV. So thank you for being on with us tonight. We thank you for agreeing to doing this interview with us to introduce yourself to the people of Jamaica as the Member of Parliament candidate for Central Kingston. As you know, the UIC is the official third registered political party, and it hasn't been a very easy road for us to get to this point. But nonetheless, you've decided to throw in your hand with the UIC. So let us begin by telling us a little bit about who Garth Barnett is. Give us a little insight into your family background, your education, your vocational history. Tell us how all of this prepared you to be a candidate in the UIC. And before you do that, let me just say welcome again to all of our viewers online. I see Miss Carol Spence and Michelle Clark and Desmond Smith and others. So welcome to all of you who are online. You're speaking with Joseph Patterson and Art Barnett. Mr. Barnett is the MP candidate for Central Kingston. At least one of them, I get to understand we have two. So we'll be hearing more about that. But Mr. Barnett, give us a little bit now about your background, family, education, vocational.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Good evening, everyone. I considered myself a humble person. I was born in a district in St. Mary called Free Hill. Uh, at a tender age, I moved to Portmore about 2, 3 with my mother and 2 elder sisters, where I went to basic school, Portmore Basic, and then at about 5 going 6, my grandmother, who was a fisherwoman, and she used to come into Portmore, buy fish, and then went back and sell in the Portmore area, Friel, Oxford, Geddestown. She would pass by where we live and saw our condition. My mother at the time, she works out and she had left us in the care of a lady who had a son. My father, he was one of the early farm workers that went into United States on the farm working program. So at 5 going 6, my grandmother came and she took the 2 elder girls because she felt that boy gave her a lot of trouble and she did not want to take me along. So my 2 sisters went first and lived with my grandmother. And then my mother came and thought, well, why not take the 3 of us? Since um, she took the 2, so my mother take me to where my grandmother was living. And there I spent the better part of my early life into early adulthood. I attend first a private basic school in that community, and then I went to Friel Primary and later to Bremerville. I so after high school, um, we were deciding what to do. The most important thing then was to seek employment or to go to university or college. At the time, from about 15, 16, I envisioned myself, wanting to build communities. But at the time, I thought, well, I wanted to do law, and then I would do law, and then enter into politics. And then it dawned on me that joining the JDF would have built me and prepare me for that role. After school, I worked for about 4 years, um, 4 going 5 years with a friend who was a furniture maker. And for a while, he was not at the shop, so no, not much work was done. So he asked me to work with one of his friends who had a shop, furniture shop in Port Maria. And that lasted for about a year. And it was a result of that gentleman that I made the decision to join the JDF. Although I had earlier written an application, got a response from the JDF, and I sat on that response from the JDF for about 3, 4 months. But based on his treatment, because at times when it was payday, didn't want to pay, and he came up with all kinds of type of stories. So I decided then it was best I move away from the community and join the JDF. So I left St. Mary in my early 20s and then joined JDF, where I spent the better part of 7.5 years. After JDF, I worked at then Linda Flores Fair as a collection officer in their account department. And then later on, I worked in a surveying company for 13 years. And during that time, I was privileged to get the opportunity to do a 1 year course at the university in social services, because I've always wanted to improve my education. That course was it was a very tedious process, because at first I'd apply to do that course part-time, then change my status to full-time. So it was quite difficult doing that course and working full-time, so that was a challenge. However, I was able to complete that 1 year course, and then later I enrolled in Institute of Law and Economics to do the overseas program, University of London. However, that fell through after a year because of administrative purposes. And then later, I I entered into UTech as a result of the same program, because the persons who operated that program, they were the one who helped UTech set up the law faculty, and I got an opportunity there to be among the first batch of students that entered that law program at UTech. I didn't finish that program as I dropped out at the end of first year, because of finances. So in the same year, I lost my job at the surveying company that I worked, and for a while I got the opportunity to work at Independent Jamaica Council for Human Rights as a legal intern, where part of my duty there was to help prepare case files, take statements, and I had the opportunity of working on two legal opinions, which at first I didn't know that I would have gotten the opportunity to do such work. But I can thank UTech for that opportunity, because during my first year, we got a lot of legal opinion to write, and I was somewhat fussy as to why we were getting all of this work, but I did not recognize that it was preparing us for the work world. So it's only as a result of that opportunity that I was able to see the benefit of that. So I left Independent Jamaica Council for Human Rights after about 9 months, and then decided I wanted to join the political movement full time. And I end up with Marcus Garvey People's Political Party. But during that time, I worked with an attorney for a few years before I decided I was actually going to move on to other things. I'm a father of one, a daughter. I'm very fortunate, that I'm able to raise a child with not the challenges that most parents seem to have along the way, especially in the teenage years. So I'm very grateful for that. Okay.
Wow, quite a history there, Mr. Barnett. If you were to summarize for us your competences, what would you say you are most competent at?
Well, I think currently I have a good grasp of the function of government and how government operate. I think I have a good grasp of how the legal system function. I think I'm able to grasp the economic condition and the social condition that exist, and able to relate to those and assist in creating ideas, workable ideas that I think can be implemented, in a quick and timely fashion. One thing I'd left out of my presentation is that between 2003 to 2006, I was privileged to be part of the JC's movement, now JC International, where I was a member of Kingston JCs and was able to get the opportunity again to sit on their board of directors in 2 consecutive years, first as treasurer and then VP in charge of the business year, where I was actually carrying 2 portfolios in that year, the treasury and the VP position. And it was there I actually got an insight into understanding when the government makes a budget presentation, I'm able to relate to some of the terms that are used and to get a better grasp and understanding of what is said. So I think those training in those areas have sort of equipped me with a better knowledge and understanding of the Jamaican society and the realities that exist and how the knowledge that I have, how I can apply that in a way that it is able to assist those who are not so fortunate to gain that insight and knowledge as I have so they can better themselves and their lives.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Barnett. Let's just pause for a moment now to welcome Dr. Greta Brown Johnson, Public Relations Director, the key member of the UIC movement, and Sonia Ellis, and Annie Moore, and Deborah Williams. Good to see you all on tonight. Let me just move now, Mr. Barnett, into a question on what really attracted you to the UIC. What is it that made you said you were a member before of the People's Political Party. I'm hearing a feedback, Mr. Barnett. Do you have something playing? I'm hearing a feedback coming through. Maybe mute your mic when I'm speaking.
Okay, Mr. Patrick.
You could just mute your side when I'm speaking, then we don't get the feedback. So my question for you, my next question for you was what attracted you to the UIC, given that you were a member of the Marcus Garvey People's Political Party before? Why would you leave the PPP to come to the UIC? What motivated you? What inspired you? And so on. Give us a feel for that transition. Thank you.
Okay. You have to look at it from the context of change and what you want to see happen for Jamaica. I think what happened to third political party is not unique to Marcus Garvey People's Political Party. And for a number of years, it has struggled with the whole issue of structuring and finance. And there are other issues. And for a year, I had sat out and look at what was happening within the organization. I had known about the UIC previously from the by-election in Northeast Central, where you had put yourself, Northeast Central is where you have put yourself forward as a candidate. So I have been following the UIC along, but not in an in-depth way as such, but from time to time I may have come across information about the UIC. I'm also aware that the UIC had formed a sort of an executive and was meeting with the diaspora. So there was a member from Fenton, a representative for Fenton. His name is McDonald. I don't quite remember his first name, but he was a member of the Marcus Garvey party, and he was one who tried to recruit me to come over into the UIC. But at the time, I held a portfolio position within the Marcus Garvey party. I was seen somewhat integral to the stability of the organization. So as such, I did not want to walk away because I think I could contribute to that movement And and I think that movement as a indigenous grassroots support, that if it is organized and structured, and that grassroots support is able to mobilize, it could have blossomed into something wonderful. It never happened. And so for a year, I stayed away from any meeting up until to the point that they were about to choose a new executive, that I went to their meeting and made the announcement that I am moving away, that, I had a year to sit out and to decide and to think about the issue carefully. And the main reason why I came to the UIC, it's a matter of consultation with individuals to find out whether or not this would have been a right move. And when I came to your meeting, the one that was held in Morant Bay, and I listened to you speak and the presentation that was made, that was the real pull factor. Talking about the vision for Jamaica, the whole linking Garvey into the whole mix of things, and then seeking to forge a greater tie with the African diaspora, things which I am very passionate about. Those were the issues that actually pulled me to the UIC.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Barnett. Moving right along, what did you, or why did you choose to be a candidate? It's one thing to join a party, to join a movement, but what is it that caused you to say, I want to be a candidate? And as a candidate, how will you make a difference in the Central Kingston constituency?
Okay. First, I would say that I'd lived on the periphery of the constituency for approximately 14 years in an adjoining community, and I would have walked from that adjoining community straight into part of the constituency, and sometime into the main part of the constituency, because I'm someone who likes to walk and just to see what is happening in various places. And then sentimental reason, part of that constituency fall in one of the division in that constituency fall in part of what was the St. Andrew division for the Legislative Council. And Marcus Garvey had put himself for the Legislative Council for the St. Andrew. For St. Andrew, Almond Town, which is in the constituency, is part of the division that Garvey held in the KCC. So for sentimental reason, that's one. And my input that I think I can make in the constituency in terms of the infrastructure changes that need to come into the community renewal, because I think a greater part of the community need a renewal, get rid of the dilapidated building, a clean up, and then housing infrastructure, because it is believed the constituency is so small and it does not have a large space to build new houses. I think if one is creative enough, the space can be found, with good planning, it can be done. So I would want to be part of that movement to create a community renewal and in terms of urban area, and also to facilitate and assist in reduction of crime and the learning process within amongst young persons, especially boys within that constituency.
Now, you might not know this, Mr. Barnett, but I was born in Central Kingston. And my early years were spent in the areas of, Beeston Street and Anova Street and Wildman Street and Princess Street and all those areas as a boy. And From time to time, I find myself in the community for various reasons. You know, I also taught at Kingston Technical High School, which is a part of your constituency as well. One of the key challenges in that constituency continues to be tribal warfare, a lot of gang related activities, a pretty hot spot in Jamaica. And the parliamentarians that have represented that area somehow seem to be very good at creating friction between various groups in the community and having them kill each other. As a member of parliament for that area, how would you go about resolving this long-standing, tribal type of violence that continues to plague the area?
I would have, firstly, I would want to say I would agree with that statement. Firstly, you have to look at the whole issue of money, vote buying. So persons within the constituency have to get into their space that it does not argue good for the individual and for the community itself. You have to create that atmosphere as well to allow persons to be able to move across the various dividing line within the community. And I see sports as one such um, thing that can help to ease the tension within the community. The community also needs um, social infrastructure, which is not along political line, because that helps to deepen the political division within the community. Currently, it is my view that there's a community center currently in the constituency. It is my view that where the community center is situated, it does not um, offer that chance for persons from the other side to come over freely because of where it is placed. So it keeps that division going because it is placed in an area which is predominantly support one political party. Also, you have to have training and employment for young persons to get them out of the idleness, to get them associated persons who are involved in criminal activities. Education is one such program which need to be implemented from an early stage, remedial learning, reading and support, basic mathematical computation, and to provide individual with skills that they can offer so they can earn, especially young men who are idle. So it has to start from early. It is not going to be done overnight, but once the determination and the effort is put in, then I think it can be achieved.
I don't know if you had a chance to walk in the area since the 5.6 earthquake that we had recently. Have you been able to assess what kind of damage was done? And I ask this because I know many of the persons in the area live in homes that have been constructed many, many years ago. Some of them live in, abandoned structures that they have occupied over the years that have not been maintained. You have roofs which are in poor condition, um, flooring in poor condition. You have in some areas raw sewage running in the street. You have some very, very compromised structures around the community. Correct me if I'm wrong. I would think that that really puts the life of the citizens and especially children and mothers at severe risk. What is your assessment of the situation there?
Um, I'm going to be honest to say that I have walked the community, but not all of the community. I was mostly on part of the Almond Town division, which is Franklin Town, yesterday and today. So I've not been able to get an opportunity to go into areas like Rose Garden Parade Garden, to Raytown, to get a better feel of what is happening on the ground. So between tomorrow into Friday, when I go into those areas, I'll be able to get a better assessment of what is happening in those areas. But I would do agree with you that there are a lot of dilapidated buildings within the constituency, some with persons, because of they do not have anywhere to live. They have ventured into those places as dwelling, and it is not, the ambience is not great. The ambience is poor. So I think it does prevent danger for those persons who live in those areas. Not just necessarily when there's an earthquake, but those buildings are fire hazards as well. So housing is a serious issue within the constituency. I would admit that I'm not sure if it is organized that way, but I know there has been an attempt to in a renewal for that area, and persons have come into the area to buy properties which persons currently live on. So I'm not sure if that is also helping to fuel the conflicts which is existing in the area, because then you know that um, money talks. So if you want somebody to remove from a particular area and you're really interested in that space, you will need use whatever means necessary to get rid of those persons. So I know there's a move to buy property which is unoccupied, and lots of those property consist of dilapidated buildings. Some of those dilapidated buildings, um, persons live in those buildings. When you go to places like Anova Street, into Rum Lane, and other places, you'll see where the housing condition is not conducive for persons to live in, as such. So, an earthquake of the magnitude of um, yesterday, I think the day before, would have put a challenge to those persons. So there would have been some structural damage in the air, but to the extent I'm not sure right now.
Right. But it's clear though that if the place has been dilapidated for as long as it has been dilapidated, now the structures are even more compromised than they were a few days ago. And so the people in central Kingston, the capital of Jamaica, are in serious danger more than they were a few days ago because of the hurricane, the earthquake that we've just had. But I'm hard pressed to believe that this is the capital of Jamaica, our capital city, and the people are living in such horrible conditions. The entire community has been so poorly maintained, poorly managed. Community centers are not, parks are not, clinics, schools. Everything in the area is pretty backward, pretty dilapidated, if you will. Now, my question is, could it be, and you have implied this, could it be that there's a plan to clean up central Kingston, but to do so without the people who currently live there, to transition those properties into the hands of some very wealthy people from overseas who might want to buy up and redevelop the area, but they want to do so without the Jamaican people living there?
I would want to tend to concur with you on that. Um, there is a particular space where there used to be an old sale. I don't know if you know the area pretty well, where Jones Barber used to be. That building has been knocked down. For now, that space it has been fenced around, and my understanding that um, it is in the hands of an overseas developer. If you look along East Queen Street, new business keep popping up, pharmacy, wholesale, and it is not local who are occupying those spaces. So I would tend to agree with you based on the information coming to me, because I know of lawyers who have said that persons have come to them and asked to buy the property that they occupy, and they have said no. So I think it is a concerted effort to remove persons have it developed without them in the area. So
I
I
mean,
would observe
if you
that.
even look at the way we're doing housing in Jamaica and in the corporate area, where you have a lot of poor people living in the corporate area, tons of poor people, but they'll never be able to afford any of those apartments that they're building. So who are they building these for? Obviously, they're building it for people other than those who are living. So we have a government that is developing Jamaica, but not for Jamaicans or not for all Jamaica, a segment of Jamaica and some people from outside. But let's continue. I want to ask you another question. Um, why didn't you join one of the two well-established colonial parties? Why did you choose to join the UIC instead of one of these two? Because they're well established. They're much easier. If you go in there, you're going to get a certain base of vote. When you join the UIC, you're starting from zero. You're going into a constituency. You have to now convince the 63% who didn't vote and who have lost confidence in the electoral system and will not even want to hear from anybody, much more a third party sometimes. And then you have those now who are entrenched on either side of the divide, and you're not going to be able to shake many of those persons. So why would you choose, the UIC over one of those two traditional parties, who I'm sure would be more than happy to have somebody of your esteemed quality seeking to join them?
Uh, Thanks for that question. I would say, well, I'd explored the idea before. Um, First, the JLP, and I was encouraged not to by someone who was an insider and also a candidate. He encouraged me to well, that was in the late 90s, to follow him and to join the NDM. However, after I went to the NDM office and I presented myself there and I was asked various questions, the secretary in the office said to me that since I was a member of the JDF, I would have been a good candidate for to be an area leader. That was the at that instant I decided that I did not want to be part of something like this, given the role that area leader plays within community. So at that moment, I knew that I didn't want to be part of something like this. I should also say that um, as a result of my opportunity to be at the university, I was able to get the opportunity to read documents in the library, and that was the first time that my mind started to open to a lot of the ongoing within the late 70s into 80s, where I recognized that the government then, because of its extension of social program, why we came under, the gang violence, the economic blockade, and so forth in the late 70s into 1980s. So as a result of that, I thought to form my own opinion as it relates to government and how they operate. So based on my understanding of both political parties, I decided that I would not want to be part of those organizations because of their history. And, basically, based on their history.
Okay, understood. I mean, I wonder sometimes if the Jamaican people pay attention to the history of these two parties. I mean, when you vote for one of these two parties, you are deliberately voting for a criminal organization, whether you accept it or not. If a person decides to join or vote for one of the two, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Barnett, if we know with certainty that an organization like I see the Prime Minister denouncing a terrorist organization in another country, a so-called terrorist organization. And he's saying that's wrong and bad. But we in Jamaica know that these two parties have carried out terrorist activities in our country. They have brought in guns from overseas and they have distributed these guns in communities. They have organized gangs. They have provided funding through our government to these gangs and built up situations similar to what we had in the Tivoli Garden situation, which resulted in one prime minister actually resigning from office because of this. So it's clear that these two parties have been involved in criminal, gang, terrorist, violence, all kinds of, ungodly and evil things. So the question is, Mr. Barnett, should the Jamaican people not recognize that these are two criminal entities and as such want two things to happen? One, for them to be removed from office, and two, for them to be tried in the court of law for the wrongs they have done to the Jamaican people. What are your thoughts?
Well, yes, I would agree with you that both political parties have helped to create the sort of environment that we have here as it relates to criminality, gun conflict. It goes far back as in the 1940s, where it is said that one of our national heroes, he was the one who started the political gang, that is Sir Alexander Bustamante. And there's a lot of information out there at person's fingertip which substantiate that. As it relates to whether or not they should be tried or not, I know that when I was part of MGPP, that's the Garvey Party, the idea of banning those two political parties from any future taking part in any future election, that discussion was taking place, and I think that is a justified call. I think those who are responsible for the atrocities which have been committed on the Jamaican people, they should be made to pay. There need to be an in-depth investigation into the happening of the political, the history of political gangs and how it has caused devastation to the Jamaican economy. Who are the major players in such a scheme, and how we can restore Jamaica to a sense of semblance where there's reconciliation amongst its people and among political lines, that both JLP and PMP and UIC can come together as one. So I would not have any argument against the statement which you made, because I think it would be a justified one.
So what is happening, Mr. Barnett, is that our children in school are not being taught the history of Jamaica. They're being taught fairy tales or propaganda, about Christopher Columbus and slavery in chains and a few things, but not the real history of Jamaica. So most children do not study in school what really happened from 1960 to today, what really happened in 1944 to today, what were the causes and effects of the various moving parts that created the Jamaica we see today. So people are going to the polls to vote. Young people, 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, are going to the poll to vote. And what they're voting on is frills. They see nice ad campaigns, sweet-mouthed politicians like Bruce Golden when he did his campaign. Beautiful campaign, very nice campaign, where he appealed to the Jamaican people that, everyone can't be rich, but no one has to be poor. And, all these nice words and phrases. But at the end of the day, they know that they're still pursuing the corruption behind the scene. They're still going to steal billions of dollars from the Jamaican people, take the bread out of the mouth of our children in Central Kingston, rob them and deny them of a good education. They're going to keep the people impoverished by withholding the land from them, withholding good housing solutions from the people. They're going to continue to marginalize small and medium businesses in Jamaica and give preference to big business and foreign interests in our country. They're going to continue to sell off our properties. They're going to continue to destroy our ecosystem with bauxite mining. They're going to do all these things. But every election campaign, they're going to have a nice sounding campaign, a well financed campaign that will be quite impressive. And the average Jamaican will be cheering and getting excited about which side is going to win. Even if they're not going to vote, they're going to be watching, with excitement who's going to win and see who has the best dub plate and who will outsmart the other one. The gymnastics of politics and the theatrics of politics. But at the end of the day, we'll be back to normal, which is a few extracting the wealth of the many and leaving them to suffer. And you have put yourself forward as a UIC candidate, and we're thankful for that because it means that you want real change in Jamaica. So my next question for you is, what is the vision of the UIC? Because every organization is built around a particular vision, a particular ethos, something which drives its members forward, drives its leadership forward. What do you know of the UIC's vision, and how does that vision resonate with you as a person?
Well, the UIC vision is to create, to bring out the best in the Jamaican people. That resonates with me because if you are able to bring out the best in all your citizens, then you will have a better society. You will have the best of the best. You will find you have good person coming with good technical skills, which is you are able to utilize, your advantage for the development of your country. And I I think it is something that I believe in. I think once you are able to put in the necessary education program and infrastructure, it can happen. So it does resonate with me from the standpoint of national development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barnett. I remember when we first coined the vision of the UIC many years ago, a very simple statement: a Jamaica that brings out the best in all its people. We didn't just put those words together for them to sound nice or for them to feel good. We put those words together to reflect our desire for something very different from what we have now. The system we have now is one that brings out the worst in our people. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I would agree with that because the system that we have now, what it has done, it has created it has not created that social cohesion, which would have prepared those who are coming to live in an environment that they can assist to facilitate the development of the country. You see where there is a broken down of the social fabric of the country. You see where persons with technical skills are leaving the country in drones, and there's a constant brain drain taking place. So if we had created a system where we would have bring out the best in our people, where you have good in housing infrastructure, which is easily accessible to the ordinary man on the street. A society where the inflation rate is not what it is, cost of living is not what it is, then you would have find more of the skilled persons with the technical ability, staying here, helping to grow the country and the economy and to ensure that the structures are in good condition.
Very well said. I see Mr. Noble is on, Wade Noble, and Jam Flicks, as well as Ann Gore and Patricia Burgess, among others. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here tonight. We're speaking with Mr. Garth Barnett, the MP candidate for Central Kingston. Mr. Barnett is keen on bringing a new kind of leadership to the constituency and to contribute to a new Jamaica, a better Jamaica, a Jamaica that brings out the best in all its people. We're talking now about the vision of Jamaica, the vision of UIC Jamaica, which is one that is going to elevate our people, from the inside out. We're talking about, fixing the mind and mentality of our people, fixing the infrastructure, fixing the housing, the education, the healthcare, fixing the economy so that it's bottom up and not top down, fixing the justice system so it's accessible to all Jamaicans, regardless of your economic position, fixing the police, transitioning it from a force to a service that will not only serve and protect, but also respect the Jamaican people. So tonight we're talking about the UIC and how an MP candidate like Mr. Barnett will be able to advance the policies of the UIC to create the kind of Jamaica that we all want to see. Mr. Barnett, my next question for you is, can you explain the mission of the UIC to our viewers and why it should matter to all Jamaicans? So tell us what the mission is, and then tell us why that mission is so important and why any Jamaican and every Jamaican, home and abroad, should be interested in that mission that UIC has set forward.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for that question. The mission of the UIC is to create a non-partisan constitutional republic where individual sovereignty is protection of rights and liberty of the individual, and also to create a safe and orderly society. It is important for those in the diaspora and at home to connect with such a mission. First, I will deal with the whole issue of the idea of the non-partisan constitutional republic. What we have now is a system where issues are actually discussed and assessed and arrive according to political lines, what the party dictates, what is in the best interest of the political parties. It is not the individual going to parliament and assessing whatever legislation come before the parliament on its merit and so forth, putting his view to say, I think this is a good and credible policy which is going to aid in the development of the country and the society at large, as opposed to what we have now. So from that standpoint, I think the Jamaican and those in the diaspora and home should resonate with that part of it, because the party would not have any say in the ongoing deliberation in the legislation, but individual himself or her would be assessing that legislation on its merit. Secondly, sovereignty, protecting life. I think it's important that we understand this type of society that we live in today, and how the state arm has been somewhat militarized and weaponized against the Jamaican people. And I think once the mission of the UIC takes root and we are able to be in that position to ensure that the individual liberty is protected, the the protection of life, and also the right of the individual to property, that property right, which is so important. Once the Jamaican here and abroad resonate with that and able to connect, and they are able to see the benefits that the UIT want to bring to the Jamaican society, then I think we'll support will come, and it will come in June.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barnett. It's interesting you brought up the diaspora, which is one of my favorite topics, for the simple reason that for too long we have neglected the role of the Jamaican who has left Jamaica for whatever reason. Many Jamaicans had to leave this country for economic reasons. Some also left for safety reasons. Um, some even leave for health reasons, and go to live elsewhere, because our governments over the last 80 years of the two colonial parties have failed to create a safe environment, a clean environment, and an orderly environment. They have failed to create an economy which works for all Jamaicans. And so many of us, in fact, you have more Jamaicans living outside of Jamaica than in Jamaica. There are approximately 4 million Jamaicans living around the world, and we're about 2.9 to 3 million people here. And if you look at the recent statistics, you'll see that the population of Jamaica has been fairly stagnant and is actually now on a decline. We're going down in terms of population because we're not having as many children, and we're not having enough people staying after getting through high school, for example. Too many are leaving versus are staying. And then we're also having a very high murder rate. So we're killing off our people. We are not giving birth to too many more Jamaicans. And many are leaving, migrating because of the various challenges they face here. So the diaspora then is very important. So the UIC's policy of the diaspora is not to see a Jamaican as a Jamaican only if they live in Jamaica. We want to expand the definition of Jamaican, that no matter where you are in the world, you belong to this body of civilized people, and you are to be protected, you are to be respected, and you are to enjoy equal opportunities and equal rights here in Jamaica. We want to make sure Jamaicans in the diaspora have the right to vote from anywhere they are in the world using absentee ballot or maybe electronic ballots in the future. We want to ensure that Jamaicans around the world have the right to return to Jamaica with all of their property, whatever they can bring back with them, without suffering any form of punitive damages coming from the government by way of duties. So they want you to come back home duty-free with your business, with your properties, with your assets that you can carry with you that you can bring back home. So we want you to be able to come home with that duty-free. We want you to be able to not only vote and come home duty-free, we want you to be able to run for office having dual citizenship. And the reason for that is we don't think you should be punished for being made an economic refugee by bad governance. So if you want to come back to Jamaica and you are American, or you are German, or you are Spanish because you went away, you were pushed out of this country by bad governance, you have now gotten citizenship elsewhere, which comes with benefits. And we're saying to you that you don't need to give up those benefits in order to come back and bring your brilliant mind, what you have learned wherever you were, bring back your assets that you have accumulated wherever you were, bring back your family, and come here and be treated like a Jamaican who has never left Jamaica, and to be given the privilege to serve in whatever capacity you want to serve in, provided you have the merit to do so, and you go through the same process as any other Jamaican to do so. And by doing that, Mr. Barnett, we want to expand the human capital pool of Jamaica, because Jamaica is suffering from a deficit of human capital on two fronts. One is the fact that our education system fails over 70% of us every year. And the other is that the best of us normally quickly leave the country. So we're suffering a massive deficit. And the way to reverse that deficit is to stop trying to find ways to discriminate against each other, but rather embrace all Jamaicans and plug us into the system and get us to be a part of one Jamaica because we're stronger together. What is your thoughts on that, Mr. Barnett?
I fully support that view. I think we need to bring the best from amongst us to function in this system in helping to create a better Jamaica. Currently, as we speak, there is a continuous moving out of those persons who have the technical competency and skills which can assist in moving the country forward. You spoke about us killing off each other, and then there's not enough children being born. But what I would also add is that a lot of children are being killed violently, and each year the number goes up. So something has to be done to stem that wave where we are losing our children to by violent means. So I totally agree with you that we need to find a way to plug the system, to seek to draw from those amongst us who are in the diaspora and would want to come back to Jamaica to assist in building the Jamaican government. I There's a friend of mine. Well, we met on social media. She lives in the state, and she's very passionate about what happens in Jamaica on the political front, in culture. And some of the times I'm very amazed of the things that she knows and she's not living here, but yet still I do not know. And it's a result of me going on her page and looking at her video. Then I'm aware of some of the things that is going on nationally, which I should be aware of. So I think I don't think I know there are those persons there who are migrated because of the circumstances here. I'm also aware there are persons who want to come back, to contribute and to buy property, but as a result of the high crime rate, they are afraid or unwilling to come back because of what is happening. So until there's a change in what is happening, we are going to find a lot of those persons who can contribute to the Jamaican economy staying away and more leaving to add to what is there already.
Absolutely. I mean, if we were to take the diaspora seriously, there's so much value that we're missing out on as a country. The UIC's model of governance includes separating ministers of government from MPs. As you know, currently the ministers of government are drawn from MPs and senators in the current model. The UIC model says no, let the politicians be politicians. So let the MP focus on representing his constituents and let the senators be elected. Right now they're appointed. Let's elect senators by parish and let them focus on representing their parishes. And for ministers, we want to have subject matter experts. Here's where now we're going to get the best people to staff, to lead, to manage, to organize, to implement the work of our ministries. And so with that model, the UIC model, you can draw on Jamaicans anywhere around the world who has the competencies to now lead, say, your Ministry of Education, your Ministry of Health, your Ministry of Housing, or whatever. So now you're going to have quality people wherever they are. So it might have a Jamaican living in Egypt who has excelled in a particular field. Let's say agriculture. He has mastered, agriculture at a level that is superior to anything we have done here in Jamaica so far. And we can call upon that person without any problem because the new constitution allows that. You bring this person back from Israel, or bring this person back from the Netherlands, or bring this person back from Africa, or wherever he is or she is, and say, come, we want to nominate you to be the Minister of Agriculture because of your great accomplishments and your achievements and all of that. And so we end up now having quality ministers of government in every one of our ministries, not because you managed to get some votes in a constituency where you might have bought those votes or whatever, but now you are somebody who is qualified and competent and can serve in that area. So we call them subject matter experts. This is where we can truly now draw upon Jamaicans, the 4 million Jamaicans around the world who have the skills and competencies that we need. They call that a meritocracy, where people are given a position based on merit, not based on their political affiliation or otherwise connections anywhere. What do you say to that, Mr. Barnett?
Um, First thing I would say, I am a believer in competence. I am a believer that when someone is chosen for a position, it is based on the person's ability and competency to do a particular job. So I would concur with you on that, because I think in such a system it would have relieved those persons who are member of parliament and also minister some of the burden that they would carry, not just as a minister but as a member of parliament, and afford that person the opportunity to spend more time on the ground within the constituency to cater to the needs of those um, individuals who actually put him or her in the position that they have. I think we do have I would agree that we do have a deficit of competent persons, and it is for us to look wider at the pool and to see how best we can create that system to bring in those persons who in the diaspora who are able and willing to come and fill that gap, because I believe that there are more than enough persons out there who have the technical competency who can fill those positions easily, you know. And it is not a case that we are going to say, all right, choose one over the other. You will have to show and prove that you have the ability to do so. So I would concur with you that once that framework has been created, it is something that we should look.
Sure. The framework that we're going to use, which will form the new constitution of Jamaica, is that every appointment, a significant position, be it a minister or a judge, in our justice system, um, the process that we're going to follow is that the core executive branch, made up of the president, elected nationally, three vice presidents, which are elected one per county by the people of those counties. So that means the president is not necessarily belonging to the same party as any of the three vice presidents, or neither of them may even belong to any party. Plus the general secretary and the treasury secretary, which are elected on the ticket of the president. But those six persons that forms the core of the administration, those six persons would nominate a subject matter expert for the various ministries based on their qualification. So submit this to the Senate. Remember now the Senate is elected by the 14 parishes, the people of the 14 parishes. So these senators now would evaluate the credentials of the nominated subject matter experts or the proposed judge for the Supreme Court or any of the lower courts. And they would evaluate this, debate it, publicly vet them, have a public hearing in the Congress where they invite these persons in interviewed in public like you and I are doing now. The people would hear their credentials, it will be posted on the government website. You can go through and check references and all that kind of stuff. And then the Senate would make a recommendation to the House of Representatives, which are all of the MP candidates, if you will, who have been elected around the country, and they'll be able to vote yes or no to the recommendation of the Senate, having vetted the candidates proposed by the executive branch. And that's how you're going to ensure transparency. You're going to ensure that the persons who are in fact appointed are persons who have the qualifications. And we, the people, would have been able to fully follow that process and can raise objections. We can write into the Senate and say, I see something that is of concern here. And so it's no more backdoor dealing. It's like how we end up with a Royal Reid as education minister or Malihu Fort heading up some big constitutional committee and stuff like that. Now you're going to have real quality people, qualified persons who are properly vetted in a public way for these positions. So the non-partisan constitutional model is so critical. And the most important part of that model, Mr. Barnett, is the fact that every one of the persons who are elected were never funded by the PSO general tax, because they would have been 100% publicly funded through a public system that gives every qualified candidate the same access to newspaper, radio, television, internet, town hall meetings, debates. So whether you're a rich candidate or a poor candidate, white or black or brown, whether you come from uptown or downtown, it doesn't matter. Once you meet the fundamental qualifications to run for office, you would have been given the same access as anybody else. And you don't have to go and beg, borrow, or thief from anyone to win your election. When you win the election, you're only committed to the people because they're the only ones who can help you to win the election. You can't go and get money to buy their votes because there'll be no money to vote. You're simply given the same access to the constituents. No money to spend on the constituents, just access to express yourself, to share your ideas, to answer questions from the constituents. But you or your opponent, nor will anybody have the right to spend any money because all of that would be illegal on the UIC constitutional republic model. How do you feel about that?
As I said earlier, I think the non-constitutional republic is a great idea. I, for one, would love to see where we reach that point where parliamentarians are discussing issues which affect the country, and they do not have to make a decision based on whether they are from a political party and whether or not the party itself, after making that decision, is going to come down hard on them because it does not reflect the party view. So for that, I think it's a great move. I also think having the separation, a true separation of power, also is an excellent move, because what you find there is that one arm of government will be a check and balance on the other arm of government. So there, one arm would not be able to run away and do as it like. It has the other arm that is pulling back, restraining it, so it does not outstep, its bounds. So I do agree with you, such a model.
So well said, Mr. Barnett. I mean, it's so important that people understand the UIC model, because when we are elected to form the government and we bring this new constitution in, for the first time in the history of Jamaica, the executive branch will be fully separate from the legislative branch. And even within the legislative branches, you're going to have the Senate being separate from the House. and the two of them are not joined by an outside funder or a political party that will be able to muzzle them or in any way, shape, or form prevent them from exercising their due diligence and their conscience in voting on any issue. So you're going to have a Senate which is elected by the people of their respective parishes to defend the interest of their parishes. And you're going to have MPs who are elected by their respective constituencies who are fully empowered. I know the beauty about it, Mr. Barnett, is that when an MP stand up in a UIC conference to speak, they'll be able to speak freely. Because as you said, the party can't punish them. If the party disqualify them from the party, it doesn't make any difference because the party can't decide if they run the next time. And the party can't decide if they get money the next time because their decision to run or their funding is not based on their party affiliation and is in no way controlled by the rich money that runs our country. Many Jamaicans don't really understand that whether they vote PNP or PNP, they're always voting for the PSOJ because the PSOJ is the financier behind those two parties, the PSOJ oligarchs. And so they control those two parties. And no matter what you, the people, do, no matter which one you vote for, anyone you vote for is answerable to those who fund their party, which is why the UIC is not funded by the PSOJ oligarchs. We're funded 100% by the people of Jamaica, if the people of Jamaica so desire. So if you as a Jamaican in the diaspora or here at home want what we're talking about, you are going to have to fund it because before the PSOJ will be giving the $500 million this election cycle to the two parties that they want to win. And they don't care which one win because they have two horses in the race that they fully support on radio and television and internet every day. And the only horse in the race which is not funded by them, which is not controlled by them, which is not owned by them, is the UIC. We're owned by you, the people. We're 100% by the people and for the people. If the people want real change in Jamaica, all the people have to do is to fund, volunteer, and donate to the UIC and help us to win. And if we win, then you, the people, win. But if the PNP wins, or if the JLP wins, the PSOJ oligarchs are the only ones who win. Okay, let's continue quickly. What do you see? Oh, I saw a question here earlier on from Mr. Kelton Hamilton. He says, hello, candidate Barnett. Can you say 3 topics that you might say to residents of the areas you will visit that may encourage them to vote UIC in the next election? Can you answer that question?
Could you repeat the question, Mr. Patterson?
Sure. Let me bring it on screen for you. Here it is. He says, hello, Mr. Barnett. Can you say 3 topics that you might say to residents of the areas you'll visit that may encourage them to vote UIC at the next election?
Is the question asking name 3 topics?
Yeah, 3 points you're going to use to sell the UIC to the constituents to vote UIC.
Okay. The first thing I would say to those persons in the constituency is the one of land ownership. That the UIC, one of the UIC policy is to ensure that every Jamaican become a property owner. It is important for us as Jamaicans to recognize the importance of property ownership and what it does to an individual. So that is the first point that I would expound on. The second point that I would say to them, the importance of the notion of a non-constituent, non-partisan constituent representation, where their representative will be going to Parliament on their behalf, not the party behalf. That all the decisions that the individual makes will be based on what is needed for the constituency and not what the party dictates. So the party itself, the constitution itself would not recognize political party. It will only recognize the individual who are going there. So I would want to expound for them to understand the importance of that principle. The other issue is the whole notion of clean and safe environment, because we have to protect the environment that we live in. We have to keep the environment safe. We have to create proper housing that is affordable for the ordinary man, not for those who can afford, who are earning a large salary. Our ancestors and those who went just before us, they have fought and labor and then in some cases die for us to have the thought of life that we have. So it is important that a government, a UIC government, provide them with that opportunity where they can live, earn, and retire in a safe and clean environment. So I would want to expound on those three topics to explain to them in detail what it means, how it is going to benefit them, how it is going to benefit their children and future generation to come.
Well said, Mr. Barnett, and thank you very much for that. My next question for you is based on the UIC's approach to manifesto. As you know, the approach to manifesto by the other parties is that every election cycle they come up with a new manifesto with new ideas, new pledges, all kind of gimmicks, all kinds of promises, but they fail to have standards. For example, I don't know what the real vision and mission of the GLP is. I don't know what the real mission and vision of the PNP is. I don't know what's their core value. What do they really stand for? Because they changed their mind in the election to offer something new. The UIC, on the other hand, is very principle-based. Our manifesto doesn't change from year to year. It is based on solid principles of protecting our individual sovereignty, protecting our collective sovereignty, ensuring that our right, life, liberty, and property is protected, ensuring that we have a economic model that gives equal opportunity to all Jamaicans, ensure we have a justice system that is just and is accessible to all Jamaicans regardless of their economy, an education system which is not monolithic and dictated by government, but one which recognizes certain requirements and opens up the sector so that we can have brilliant Jamaicans demonstrating other ways of doing things and we can all learn from each other. And the healthcare system which ensures no one is left behind, but that they're not also locked into a poor quality healthcare system because they are poor. So the UIC is very clear mandate, clear instruction. So I want to ask you this question. Can you tell us three things from the UIC's manifesto that stands out for you? I know you embrace all of them, but what are the three, maybe, most passionate elements of our manifesto that stands out for you?
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Out of my head, I could say um, the whole notion of that non-constitutional party constitutional constituencies, non-partisan constitutional republic. That's the first thing, because I see the benefit that it will bring to the society, having persons discuss ideas not along party lines. The second thing is property. I'm very passionate about that. I think it is important that every Jamaican get an opportunity to own property, to have access to property. I think that it's so important, not for some who have the means that can purchase, or property is divided for a certain class. So that I'm passionate about. Also, the whole notion of clean and safe environment. I'm passionate about that. Where the environment is concerned, it is all will also entail security, because if you're going to create a clean environment and a safe environment, it is going to take into consideration security, how you're going to protect the individual, how you're going to protect the state, not just from a legislative point, but also what are you going to do to ensure that there's a reduction in crime rate, your borders are protected. So those are the three things that come readily to mind, and I'm passionate about all three.
Okay, wonderful, Mr. Barnett. I mean, I noticed you mentioned a number of things that are particularly on the 10-point plan, which comes out of the manifesto. But the manifesto itself speaks to some very high level issues. It talks about personal liberty, talks about self ownership, it talks about expression and communication, parental rights, crime and justice, privacy, death penalty, self defense. Let me ask you one specifically. On the matter of self defense, the UIC's manifesto, point number 8 says the only legitimate use of force is in defense of individual rights, life, liberty, and justly acquired property against aggression. This right inheres in the individual who may agree to be aided by any other individual or group. We affirm the individual right to responsibly keep and bear arms and oppose the prosecution of individuals for exercising their rights of self-defense. What are your thoughts on that statement?
I did not get it in entirety. I'm going to ask you if you could repeat
Sure.
that.
I'll just summarize it for you. So it's the point of, and there's some feedback, I don't know where it's coming from. There's the point of self-defense. So I'll read it for you again. It says the only legitimate use of force is in defense of individual rights, life, liberty, and justly acquired property against aggression. This right inheres in the individual who may agree to be aided by any other individual or group. We affirm the individual right to responsibly keep and bear arms and oppose the prosecution of individuals for exercising their rights of self defense. In other words, the UIC fully supports your right to defend yourself, and we fully support your right to own a firearm and not to be prejudiced by the state or deprived by the state, unless there is some extraneous reason. For example, you're a person of unsound mind, or you have committed a criminal act that caused you to lose your rights. But outside of anything extraneous, we believe that you have the right to self-defense. You have the right to bear arms. We believe force is only necessary when somebody is trying to violate your rights. And I want you as an individual to be able to defend yourself and not simply have to wait until the state finally comes around to defend you, at which point you might be dead. What are your thoughts on that?
It's an interesting point. It is not something that I myself would totally dismiss, given the society that we live in today. Also, the state at times seems to overstep its bound. So there has to be some limit as to what one do. But in the context which you put it, I would want to tend to agree somewhat in that the individual does have the right to protect his person. The individual have the right to protect his family, and the individual have the right to take the necessary steps that he think is necessary to ensure that there's no harm to the person as such. So I would agree with you in that context. I think also the current state um, apparatus would not see um, you know such a policy statement as as a just as something just that they would want to see happen. But if you're progressive enough and you're looking to move the society in a way that you think it is going to be best suited or needed for the individual right to be protected and for the state itself and other individuals not to overstep that boundary, then I think I would not have a problem with something like that. So I would agree with you in that context that the right to self-defense is something that one should have.
We have another question here from Jamflex. He says, UIC election reforms. Let me see if I can find that. Sorry, it's going off screen. Let me bring it up for you. Where is it? Yes, here we go. Jamflex is saying UIC election reform specific to campaign finance is noble. Can you name a country that implemented public financing? Are you aware of any country that has implemented public financing, Mr. Barnett?
Um, Off my hand, I would not say yes, but what I can say, and you made mention of it several times. Singapore. I know Singapore. What I know of Singapore and Lee Kuan Yew is that while a number of Singaporean students they were Malaysian Chinese. I mean Singapore Chinese were in Malaysia study. A group of them got together and they understand the ongoing within Singapore and they decided that these are the steps that we are going to take when we go back. We are going to get involved in the political affairs of the country. And one of the first steps that they sought to do was to eliminate corruption from the political sphere. There's a notable incident where a politician one weekend went on a private vacation with businessmen. No business was discussed and no offer was made to the parliamentarian. But when he came back off that trip, he was arrested and charged on the notion that he could have been bribed by the proceeds of going on that trip and having that vacation with those businessmen. It opened himself for corruption. So on that notion, he was as he came off that vacation, he was arrested and charged, and no other politician chose to do that. It actually set the stage for them to move ahead in eliminating corruption from the political landscape in Singapore.
Mr. Barnett, I think by now everybody knows that I am one of the greatest fans of Singapore and particularly Lee Kuan Yew, and his leadership. I am most impressed by his leadership. We have taken the Singaporean success another level by not only having policies that are great, but designing a constitution from its foundation to so ensure that even after the death of every one of the UIC leaders, the principles of good governance would have been etched into the psyche, into the laws, into the common ethos of the nation going forward. So, for example, one of the best ways to avoid corruption is by removing the incentives up front. When you create a publicly funded finance system of campaign, which completely eliminates big capital or big money or the oligarchs from the process of being able to buy influence um, directly through the political process, you are immediately reducing the capacity for corruption. When you further ensure that you, by design, separate the various branches of government, Senate, House, and executive, in addition to separating it from the judiciary, you are again systematizing the functions of corruption elimination. When you go further and create a constitution that respects the sovereignty of the citizens, which makes it impossible for the government to overstep its bounds without breaking the law, and by extension, being a target for removal by any means necessary by the people, you further strengthen the whole business of eliminating corruption. And when you create a school system, an education system that insists upon diversity and allows the student to get a broad range of education, allows him to think and challenge the status quo without being offside, without being ostracized, without being marginalized because he's learning something which the state doesn't want him to learn, then you're building automatically the kind of internal controls a country needs to defend itself against the kind of corruption that we have seen in the last 80 years. I am certain that as we speak, our PSOJ oligarch friends and those in the leadership of the two parties are quaking in their boots, hoping that this UIC message does not take off. Because the moment the people recognize the gem, the value, the golden nugget that we have here prepared for them, it's the day when not only corruption dies, but the architect of that corruption, the colonial masters, their two colonial parties, and their financial backers would have recognized that the gravy train is over and they can no longer divide, distract, or extract the wealth of the Jamaican people anymore. So I'm really looking forward to that. My final question for you tonight, Mr. Barnett, is centered around the idea. You mentioned it earlier on. You know, in our 10-point plan, we have a number of things in the 10-point plan. You have alluded to the question of the property that was stolen from the Jamaican people, and this is very serious. Yeah, the property that was stolen from us. I don't think enough people have yet fully recognized the seriousness of what the UIC is moving forward. We're saying to the Jamaican people that the land of Jamaica does not belong to the crown. It does not belong to the government. The land belongs to you, people. Anyone who is of African ancestry, whose foreparents were enslaved on this piece of land, this land is yours by right. It's not something the UIC is going to give you. It's not something the government of Jamaica is supposed to give you. It is yours by right, which has been stolen by the colonial masters. And after they, in a symbolic way, suggested that they have given us self-governance and independence, and our own political leaders have continued to withhold this land from you. They have perpetuated the theft of your land, and they have devised all manner of schemes to sell you back what is yours, and to sell you back at interest to further enrich those who enslaved your foreparents, who are now operating as robber barons in our country, operating the banking sector in ways to further steal your labor and steal your time. Your two most valuable assets is your labor and your time. Anybody that steals your labor and your time, they're enslaving you. And so they've enslaved you by making sure that you have no property, that you're propertyless, And those of us who have managed to access some property get it by one of two ways or three. Either our foreparents managed to get a piece and pass it down to us through some means, or we engage in some form of corruption or political connection to get a piece, or we slave and buy back a piece of what was ours. The time has come for us to say enough is enough and vote for ourselves leaders who are going to return the land that was stolen from us to us. And that return can be structured in various ways. IC has a model for doing so. We're tired of now telling them what our solutions are and watch them go every day on television and peddle those solutions back to us if it's coming from them. And we know they're never going to do it properly anyway. So we're not going to tell you the details, but be rest assured, the UIC is going to return the land that was stolen from you to you, and we're going to do so free of charge, 100%. Now, I'm sure you agree with that, right, Mr. Barnett? You said it earlier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Patterson. Before I respond to that, let
Yeah.
me say that just create the indulgence to go back to the previous point a bit. Where Singapore is concerned, over time, I've heard you articulate the point of where Singapore was and where it is today. And in my headspace, I'm thinking, what does Mr. Patterson see in Singapore so much? So I took the opportunity one day to say I'm going to do some research on Singapore and find out what could have driven the Singapore economy to what it is today. And in so doing, I was able to get some valuable information as it relates to the Singapore economy, what they did, how it was done, the structure of the government, including especially the political party, and how Lee Kuan Yew and others were able to ensure that there was continuity going forward. So I wanted to just make that point. But as it relates to the land itself, the property right, I think it is very important that all Jamaicans recognize the importance of owning property. As I said earlier, it's something that I'm very passionate about. I know the previous PNP government tried something. First, in the 1970s, Michael Manley was creating land lease, and there's a particular estate that I can talk about, Trial in St. Mary, where the land was given to persons from the surrounding community and elsewhere. Some persons actually took up the offer and they went and they built houses on that land. Most of who did were party supporters. However, that was the springboard for them to build family and to ensure that they were able to have a roof over their head, and they were able to take care of their family and send them to school, and the children have somewhere to come home comfortable. Um, the Operation Pride, yes, but it did not go enough as the distribution of land was seen along political lines, and that lends itself to corruption. I would also like to mention um, something and that is very dear to me, Pinnacle, in where Pinnacle was owned by Leonard Percival Howell, one of the four, or the forerunner of the Rastafarian movement, who had to leave Morant Bay because of persecution and was integral in the labor movement at the Bowden Wharf in St. Thomas. So he found himself in Pinnacle in St. Catherine. Um, from the record, it was almost 1,000 acres of land. And for several years, he and his Rastafarian followers lived in that community. My understanding from persons who knew the community itself, including former Member of Parliament Mike Henry, who have been JLP Member of Parliament, who have been to the community. And he said he had been there when he was a boy. I've heard stories from persons who have gone there and who were surprised that the community was self-sufficient. It has their own bank. They do their own medicinal product. They make their own shoes and so forth. And it is sad that over a number of years, attempt was made to drive the family from Pinnacle, the burning down of the Great House. The property was formerly owned by a governor, but there is historical record which shows that he owned the land or he may have leased the land. And to see some of the players who were involved in the 40s and the 50s to get rid of Leonard Percival Howell, it is some of those family defenders of those families who have come together to totally occupy the property now by getting rid of the Rastafarian from the property. I think it's a bit disingenuous for the culture minister in I with the in consort with the owner to designate two lots as heritage site to the Rastafarian community. I think it's a slap in the face. I think if those persons at the time, understand the importance of owning property, then that property would have still be in the hands of the Rastafarian community. And they have been there for over 50, 60, 70 years. So the owning property and property right for us of indigenous people who our ancestors worked and died, shed their blood on the sugar plantation, on the plantation after slavery, struggled, as laborers on plantation, it is their right to actually own property in this time. So I totally agree, that the land need to be returned to the Jamaican people. You cannot come and see people living on land and then unilaterally claim property which is not yours. And it is what is fueling the conflict within the Middle East. It is what is fueling the conflict that fueled the conflict in Zimbabwe, and it is also brewing in South Africa. So with that, I think it is for us to recognize the importance that the UIC brings to the table in wanting to ensure that property rights is enshrined and also the Jamaican people have access to property, not in a piecemeal fashion, but in a true fashion.
Well said, Mr. Barnett, and thank you very much for that. Now, our 10-point plan has a number of other elements in here that we could talk about, but we're running out of time. The last question I have for you is, what will it take for you, Mr. Barnett, to win in the next election? What will cause you to win in your constituency? What do you need from us? What do you need from people in order to win?
Well, I think the first thing is information. Information to the people for them to recognize if they want real change, then they have to make a change from the voting pattern that they have been used to, voting one way or the other, but to look alternative based on what is presented to them. So it cannot be that you're going to vote because you're a diehard PMP or GLP supporter. you're going to base your decision based on the information that is presented to you. You have seen both political parties at work. You have had member of parliament from both political parties, yet still the state of the constituency remains in the same at the same stage. There has not been any development in the infrastructure, in the housing, you know, in employment, so it's to get to the people the information that the change that I would want to bring.
So, so,
Um,
so be a bit more practical for me,
that's
Mr.
the
Barnett.
first.
What do you need to win? Be very practical with the people. What is it that you need to win?
Well, so what I need to do is to ensure that I'm on the ground. I'm constantly on the ground. I have the requisite material that I can provide the constituency with. That the program and activities I that I have for the constituency that it actually get on off the ground. That
Mr.
the
Barnett, sorry to interrupt you, sir. I want you to be very practical and very straightforward. What is it that you need in order to win? What do you need? What do you want us to do for you? We the people, what are we supposed to do to help you to win?
well, first I would want to say that what the people or what the diaspora need to assist me in gaining that. We are not seeking fund from the private sector. We are trying to generate our own fund. So funding is key. That is one of the first things which is needed to ensure that the campaign actually gets off the ground, that the campaign is maintained, that the campaign can be successful. Then all other material can come forward, such as the project and so forth, which need to get off the ground. So I would say funding for the campaign that is the number one priority right now.
Because I don't want us to. One of the things I try not to do is, Mr. Barnett, I don't want the people to be misled. You might know the history of Jamaica and third parties. It's a very simple history. A third party comes up, the people get excited and say, "Yay, third party." And then they sit and watch and wait for the third party to do something, not realizing that the third party can't do anything of substance, anything um, of sufficient magnitude, anything on a sustainable level. If that third party, whether it's the UIC or any other, if it does not have the funding, it cannot do the work. So you, Mr. Barnett, what is your you know day's life? How do you factor in campaign in between your daily life as a parent, as a full-time worker and a part-time politician? How do you factor in the work of the UIC in your life? And who pays for that? Who pays for the time you have to spend doing the work you need to do as a candidate of the UIC? Who pays for that?
Currently, all the funding comes out of my pocket. You know, I there's a lot of time that I have to go into the constituency, and when I talk to person, I can remember a few days ago, I was in the Almond Town division and I was having a discussion with a young lady, and I was telling her that I was a representative in the area, and she was saying, "Well, um, we don't see anybody from the other two parties here, but say you have to have money to give to the guys." And I told her that we are not into that type of politics, the vote buying. So the funding necessarily funding comes out of my own purse. I
And
give
how and
I
how
give it
sustainable how sustainable is that? Can you how many persons are in your constituency? How many electors are in your constituency?
Um, at the last check that I looked at, it was just over 22,000 persons within the constituency, and it's almost broken evenly among the division. There are two
Yeah,
divisions within the constituency.
two divisions. And,
Yes.
how many polling divisions you have there?
Uh, at the last check, I think it was about 77.
77.
Yes.
So if you have 77 polling divisions, it means uh, you need to have at least what now? Let's say 6 workers per division. Yeah. Do you have the means to drive around to all of those polling divisions on election day? Do you have a vehicle to drive you around? And do you have escorts to drive you around? Do you have the capacity to print enough literature to hand out and to employ volunteers and support those volunteers with refreshment and transportation to get around to all of the houses, all of the divisions, all of the polling divisions? Will you have the capacity to provide lunch and refreshments to all of your workers on election day? Do you have the capacity to house your election workers and provide them training over the next few days and weeks in preparation for the work on election day? Will you have a solid ground machine in place? And can you do that without having adequate financial resources to staff, a constituency office or two, small offices around to coordinate your people, to buy data, to have, phones, to have printed materials, to engage people? Can you have meetings, call meetings at different spots in your constituency and have the means to have PA systems and all that kind of stuff to be able to do your work effectively? Can you do that on your current budget?
That is a very important question, Mr. Patterson. I would admit that funding is not what it is. There are a lot more that I could do if there was the funding which you speak to. Currently, there is a small team which I'm actually building, and as the team gets bigger, it is going to require funding. Some of the work which is done, it is actually done voluntary. You speak to printing of flyers also currently. There's no. I'm going to be honest. There's no flyer printed, but when it is done initially, it will be out of my own personal purse. So I have to utilize what resource I have now to the best of my ability. The issue of training of workers and finding lunch for those workers, it is of vital importance. Also on the day, being able to have workers in polling station, have them get credit so you could employ your exit poll strategy is very important. It is going to take some amount of resources to get it done. And if I'm going to be very competitive, because I'm not here just to put my face or to say I'm entering the race. I'm there to ensure that I put a good show and also with the intent that I actually bring home the seat for the UIC
Yeah,
to
so
to stand.
speaking practically, Mr. Barnett, practically speaking, I mean, I've already participated in one election in my constituency of Northeast St. Elizabeth. I have gone through the full process. I have in my election, I spent $700,000, which was peanuts. That was nothing. One of the things I've learned is you don't win election on election day. Election day is when you get the result, where you just you put the icing on the cake. You win an election long before election day. It's about your groundwork for the weeks and months leading up to election. It is you having a team in place today, a team in every single one of those polling divisions. You need a minimum 2 drivers, a minimum 2 conductors that's going to shepherd people to your vehicles on election. If you don't do that, the other side won't do it, and I'm going with. You need at least 2 trained indoor agents and 2 trained outdoor agents. Then you need some backup because on election day some people won't show up because they're sick or get cold feet and all kinds of stuff. That work has to be done prior to election day. The organization. Now, most of our people that are going to be available to do that kind of stuff are persons who are sadly in need of a lot of financial help themselves. They're coming to you as volunteers, but they're personally in their own lives struggling. And these are the people that the 2 parties take advantage of. They go out there, and when the time comes, they already fool them up to become die-hearted because their grandparents or parents were, and they're going to just feed them a little bit. They feed them some t-shirt, feed them some cap, feed them a few dollars here and there, make some promises to them, make them feel good, make them feel a part of something because them have offices and them have staff and so on to help out. You have staff people. You have to have staff, people who are on staff, who are paid to manage volunteers, to manage coordination, because you alone can't do it. And so I would like to make sure that our listeners understand that this is not a game. It's not a plaything. To simply say, vote UIC is not enough, because people are not going to just vote UIC. They're going to vote if they see the UIC, if they feel the UIC, and if they think the UIC can win based on what they see with their eyes in their community. If they don't see you in the community, and by you I don't mean just you personally, they don't see your team in the community and see a good sized number of people moving around in the community and feel the presence of your organization, and then on election day see your election strategy unfolding, your apparatus unfolding, your team, your army unfolding and fanning out across the constituency and mobilizing and bringing out an election day. If they don't see that, the very same person who did not vote for you, when they look at election day and they see that kind of presence, they just shrink back, and they will quick. You might see them in a green shirt or an orange shirt on election day instead of your blue shirt. And so we have to. I have been preaching this, and people have actually used it against me. I say, "Appear money in my town about." I understand the consequences of us not having the resources to do what needs to be done. And so I don't shy away from telling the Jamaican people here at home and abroad that we must get very, very serious about funding, owning, and controlling the UIC if we want to see the Jamaica that the UIC advocates. And so tonight, sir, I want to thank you for being on, and I want to just implore everyone, wherever you are, to make sure that you understand that for the UIC to win, you are going to have to do more. All of us, we have to join, volunteer, and donate for us to win. So, Mr. Barnett, hats off to you, sir. Thank you for deciding to be a UIC candidate. But before we go, I want to ask everyone to give you a little vote based on your performance. I'm going to switch it around tonight. I want you to score Mr. Barnett tonight, not the program so much. If you think Mr. Barnett is fit and ready to be a successful MP candidate to UIC, I want you to give it a 100%. If you're not too sure, you can get less than 100%. And just say what you think about Mr. Barnett in a percentage: 100, 99, 95, 80, 85, 60, 70, 50, whatever. Give him a score for me tonight so we can see what you think of Mr. Barnett as a candidate, because we always want your feedback and your input. While they're doing that, Mr. Barnett, you have the last word, sir. What would you like to say to Jamaican people and to those in your constituency of Central Kingston tonight? And big up all my family and friends down at Lake Road. Go ahead, Mr. Barnett, your last word.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. What I want to say to Jamaica, in particular to persons who are residing in central Kingston, for you to come out and support the UIC in whatever venture that you see that the UIC is putting forward. It is for your own good and for the betterment of the Jamaican society and for your children and children to come. I will implore each and every one of us to donate, engage, give your time to this effort in helping to mobilize support for the UIC. If you see someone in your constituency, in your community, who you think is a good representation and who can represent themselves well and will make a good UIC representative, ask them, encourage them to come on board and join us. Even if you are not a candidate, lend your support as a worker, give of your time, give of your resources so the numbers can grow, the support can grow. Spread the word on your social media page, encourage one to join the UIC, by sharing the message gets out and the numbers will grow, and more persons will know about the UIC. And thank you for having me, Mr. Patterson. Mm, mm.
Sorry you can't hear me. Thanks again, Mr. Barnett, for being with us tonight. And I want to remind all of us that we're stronger together. When we work together, we can do this. Now, we always end our program, Mr. Barnett, by saying, one Jamaica,
One Jamaica,
stronger.
stronger together.
All right. And that's how we go out, my ladies and gentlemen. One Jamaica, stronger together. Let us unite. Let us work together for this new Jamaica. And I think if all of us give a little bit of our time, a little bit of our talent, a little bit of our treasure, it will be a collective whole that allows us to achieve our grand objective. Thanks again. Good night. Until next time. All the best. Bye bye.
Mm.